Hello there! Welcome back to Charles Circle, and welcome back to Captain of Industry. Last time, we started making gold and used it to produce luxury goods for our citizens. Today, we'll use that gold to build the Statue of Maintenance. We'll also begin CO2 recycling and expand our farmlands, all while pushing to the finish line on our long-standing efforts to terraform Silicon Ridge. Alright, let's get into today's to-dos. So as we mentioned, the Statue of Maintenance is something that we thought we were going to get into last time, but didn't quite have the time. So we will get that built. We will also start to recycle CO2, which is a technology we unlocked at the end of last episode that will help us supply graphite a better way and reduce air pollution all in one. We are also going to need to expand our farmlands. I think we're going to try to squeeze a fifth farm in here. We're just, with our recent population growth, kind of running low on a bunch of staple crops. I alternate back and forth between either running out of corn or bread, wheat for bread, and we're still nowhere near truly keeping up on the vitamin category. So another farm would be helpful. We still are going to kick the can down the road on a longer term solution, but until we figure that out, I think we at least need to add another farm. Easy enough. Of course, we will also continue doing some detailing work here and there, continue paving, adding more roads, and so on and so forth. And all the while, we will continue to push on this terraforming effort. This, especially in the mid-game, you know, when you start to feel like you could do terraforming, but you haven't really truly spun up mega vehicles, man, this stuff can take a while. But we have continued to add more and more of these mega vehicles, and we are in a pretty good place here to cross the finish line soon, I think. So let's start off then with talking about the Statue of Maintenance. So the Statue of Maintenance comes in two flavors if you have the supporter pack, or one flavor if you don't, and in either case it performs the same function. One is just shiny and gold. That's the only difference. And what it does, besides looking pretty cool, is for every one of these that you have, it will consume fuel gas, but it will reduce your global maintenance requirements. The first one reduces it by 4%. They stack, but not linearly. The second one will not get you all the way to an 8% reduction. There's a sort of diminishing returns for each additional one that you build. I think the conventional wisdom, though I've never really sat down and run the numbers myself too deeply, is that the first two that you build are generally worth it, so to speak, but after that, the diminishing returns can get pretty underwhelming. So I'm kind of thinking something like this in this area looks neat, because the supply of fuel gas is really the only location consideration besides, well, does it look cool? And unfortunately, all the places that look cool are also far away for fuel gas. In the longer run, wouldn't it be kind of neat to put a statue with like the captain's office up on top of this ridge? I don't know, something like that. But for now, we're going to put him down here. It'll be easy enough to get the fuel gas over the tracks here and connect up. So that's what I'm thinking. I bet we can even do two of them. But you'll see, they're a little expensive. The construction parts 3 and the steel, no problem. We have to come up with 1,000 spare copper each, though, as well as 800 gold. So it's going to take a minute. And out here, all of our copper is being immediately consumed for electronics that are either being shipped out to the base for the various purposes we need there, or being pushed along to keep up on our electronics 2 needs, and we are consuming a lot of them, unfortunately. That's fine, right? We knew we had at least a small supply that was worth building before we get our mega factory up, but I think we're kind of at the edge there. We really can't add much more electronics 2 consumption here without throwing this out of whack. So what I'm going to do, we've certainly got some unity, is boost the copper production here. And once this is full, we will start construction over there and have our trucks run it over so that we aren't wasting anything. The other thing I'm going to do real quick is change around our research order. Our vehicle network is hurting, and that's been an intentional trade-off. Obviously, I don't like that, but I was willing to put up with it because I wanted to allocate as much as possible to this terraforming effort. It'll get better, right, once that's resolved and we can move some of these trucks back to other efforts, but I don't really want to draw any of them back in the meanwhile, and we are still dealing with some issues with, say, slag backing up in certain places or fuel gas not getting where it needs to go, so on and so forth. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to pause this research. We'll come back to it. Definitely going to grab it. But what we're going to do first instead is just grab 30 more vehicle cap. So let's do that. And then we'll go back to grabbing Arc Furnace 2. This is the last of the technologies that we'll make use of in the factory build for electronics shortly. And then it might be nice to have, well, we can always come back and upgrade, so I don't think it really matters that we have large storages quite yet. What I think we might need to do, this is thinking ahead to the factory build, is actually grab nuclear. So our power has kind of actually come up against our capacity when we spike, say, the entire set of assemblies in the construction parts factory, or all the crushers running, etc. We're going to add a ton of machines in this factory, and I had kind of hoped we could build the factory and then build nuclear, but I think we might have to build nuclear first. So let's see, we'll figure it out, but I think we're going to make sure that we at least have that technology. We already talked about, I think briefly, the idea that, this is uranium, and why not just do it right here anyway to go along with the factory? The only question is just the order, but we give ourselves the options by researching, so we'll queue that up. Beyond that, housing 4, maybe. We're gonna need a lot of workers soon too, and that footprint is getting pretty tight. And then storages, sure, why not? Very good. While that's chipping away, we've got a few more solar cells, so sure, let's continue to expand our solar installation over here. And let's use some Unity to speed up some of this paving work. That is something that is definitely distracting our trucks unnecessarily, and we have a ton of Unity, so let's just spend all the concrete we have, I guess, making a chunk there. Done. So something else that we can do to help our truck network is to remove unnecessary trips like this one that they are failing to keep up on. The hydrogen originally we had let be brought in from down the road because we had so much of it over there. But we do have some of it over here, and because they are struggling to keep up with things like slag as it is right now, let's just take something else off their plate. So I'm going to connect up this output here, I don't know, somehow get it through this thicket of pipes and back under this vehicle ramp, which I guess we conveniently never deleted. So I'm gonna dive in and do that real quick. All right, so hopefully that's helpful. Let's see how it impacts the frequency of this alert, if nothing else. But that looks good so far. All right, with a bit of a copper stockpile built up here, it is time to kick off this construction. We'll do it one at a time so they stay focused and don't split their deliveries between the two. And the other thing we need to do, and it needs to be done before this thing turns on, is we need to connect up the fuel gas, because there's actually a penalty if you have this thing built but aren't constantly supplying with fuel gas. I guess there's something negatively poetic about not being able to properly maintain your statue of maintenance. So let's dive in and make sure that that's all connected as well. All right, I think that works. It looks a little industrial, but hey, that's the whole point. It's a statue of a man with a hard hat and a wrench in his hand, so that'll work. I wanted to make sure it was, after some thought, downstream of this large storage. We'll be quite sure, I think, not to run out of buffer there. So it's technically branching off of the hydrogen reformers here. And maybe just to be safe, I don't think we're coming up on the throughput quite yet, but why not just make that a pipe 3 to be sure? I've upgraded pipes actually in a couple areas that might be worth pointing out. I did end up using a pipe 4, which we unlocked last episode along with belts 3, in order to, well, not do anything apparently, because I didn't do this last little segment, typical, but in order to drain the cargo ship faster. This throughput is starting to be occasionally an issue, one that would be solved by a larger buffer, but part of what it was is simply it was taking too long for the boat to drain. And each of these has a throughput of 250, but when they're all pooled together like this, right, we still don't even have a throughput of 1,000 here, but it's a lot closer now than it was at 450. So it, made the unloading process, when there's room for it, twice as fast. And when there's room for it is exactly when we want this thing to hurry up, dump its goods, and get back out there. So that's been helpful. I think also coming from the power plant, worth pointing out, I have increased the throughput of the exhaust pipes. That was on occasion becoming an issue. This has plenty of throughput. It was just about getting all of this exhaust through the same pipe on its way out there. But other than that, I think we're in generally pretty good shape around here. And as I'm sitting here thinking about how we're going to allocate that upcoming extra 30 vehicles, I'm realizing we probably want a Vehicle Depot 3 over here as well, because we have a lot of work still being done by, for example, our amphibious trucks that are running around lots of loose goods. We have our train network doing a lot of work on the rock and slag front, but there's still a good amount of the base that is not supplied like that. There's still mine, ore sorters that have outputs that need sorted out. There's the occasional slag from something like the glass factory that still needs serviced manually. All of the recycled goods are loose goods. So I think we're going to get a Depot 3 in here. And I think I'll just place it here. And we'll adjust the connections in a moment, but I want to have this up and running before we delete this. So we'll have our trucks build this, and we're going to make this manually very high priority because you can't quick build it, and it'll just never get built, which is the catch-22 of not being able to actually use the vehicles. So let's come back when this is complete, and we can clear this out and make some better connections here. Might even use this extra space for something. Let's see. All right, we're built. Starting to clean up the extra old stuff around here. I will dive in and change a lot of these connections. Have to decide which ones are worth connecting up to the new depot and which are not. And I think the parts 3 is an open question because we are exporting that for the most part, but might prefer actually to send it over here, at least for now. But we can just pause that. It's not far. So I think what we'll do first and foremost is, not that we can do it quite yet, but at least queue up a set of, let's say, 5 dump trucks to start. That'll take a while because 550 vehicle parts 3 is going to be our limiter, no question. We'll make them hydrogen for sure. We should probably get a hydrogen fuel station set up somewhere on this island as well. And we have the rubber right here too, so maybe I'll connect some of these up. Actually, I'm coming out of this and realizing, you know what? I think I just want to redo this whole area. We no longer need to be thinking about vehicle parts 1. We need to now be thinking about exporting vehicle parts 2 and have multiple priorities for vehicle parts 3. We also don't really need diesel anymore. We're going to be making all of our new vehicles in hydrogen. On occasion, we may yet make a diesel train, but we can still supply that naturally. So I'm just realizing there are enough changes here since we set this up originally that I think I'm just going to start it over from scratch. So let me dive in and take care of that real quick. All right, I think this works. Minus this, we'll need to slot this in once the diesel's cleared out of here, but I don't want to waste it. So let's get this out. And while that's going, walk through what all we've done. So it's the same buildings, but we've removed a couple unnecessary steps. So we still start with steel into mechanical parts, of course. Mechanical parts then mixes up with electronics to make vehicle parts. Vehicle parts get mixed with steel and glass to make vehicle parts 2. We come out here to vehicle parts 2, and let's prioritize not the export. Oh, I actually should pause that too. Not the export, but we will occasionally need this for imported goods, for luxury goods. That's our first contract using vehicle parts 2, and there may be others in the future. The prioritized output, though, goes out this way to continue in and be made into vehicle parts 3, which requires, of course, the electronics 2 over here. Same thing here, though. We want to be able to prioritize, and here we're going to prioritize local consumption at this depot, and any excess can be, unless I miss a single tile of belt, sent out this way, where we're going to slot in this storage here. Waiting for this to go so that I can move this over and this in. And then, yeah, the rest of this should work just fine. Hydrogen is over here as well, and gonna come around, go directly into the depot and into the train depot as well, since we're going to make, I think, more hydrogen trains than diesel trains going forward. So we're dealing with a minor crisis over here. Our fuel gas has just like absolutely fallen off right while I was focused on increasing our hydrogen consumption, and that's not great. I think the issue has actually just been the delivery of landfill for these contracts more than anything else. So what I'm going to do is, especially this dirt one, this basically we're waiting on trucks to run this around, which is not ideal. So I'm going to connect this station, which is always meant to be temporary anyway. I'd like to get this train to run onto this track eventually, but we don't have time for eventually. So right now, we're going to do a quick little fix right here and send it over to connect up with the line over here. I don't think it matters that we're crossing these tracks, so let's just do it. And hopefully this is a quick fix for our supply issue. Rock is another issue. See, we have trucks lined up to take it, or to bring it over here. It's just a matter of throughput. But again, we can't fix that until we fix things over here, and that will also take hydrogen. So let's check back in a moment, see if we can't get ourselves out of the pickle. All right, a little while later, we're bouncing back just fine. We did get the next level of vehicle cap, and so this is now our second haul truck, and his compatriot has already been helpful, and he will certainly as well be. Let's go ahead and speed up the delivery here, make sure we're keeping up, but things are bouncing back, looking up. Well, and amidst that crisis, we have completed our first statue of maintenance. Looks pretty cool. As long as this torch is lit, we will have -4% to our total maintenance costs for the entire base, for the entire island, for the entire save file. And that's nice. It applies across the different maintenance types and is impossible to see in the noise here, but is still very much there. And if we're looking at about 1,000 right now, it's a knockoff of about 40. So we'll take that. And the next one is, well, it's about 50% as effective, so that'll bump us from -4 to -6. So let's get that going as well. And then as a quick check-in / reminder that this is why we are redlining the rest of our base, we are making pretty good progress out this way. So very happy to see this continuing. We have just finished our 5th dump truck, the first of that initial 5 that we queued up. I went ahead and slapped down another 5 because they've been a huge help so far. They are really pitching in on some of this like spotty landfill stuff. So we've, for example, run into a pretty rocky segment in the iron vein here, and our little shuttles are not keeping up. And, we could set up a proper longer train, but this is temporary. We aren't going to need that in the longer run. So having these guys around as essentially surge capacity for disposing of this sort of thing is extremely helpful. This is where I really like mega vehicles. They are as flexible as trucks, but have the throughput of a small train, right? Especially with that, with the boost edict that we have on, the extra 20% maintenance, but an extra 15% capacity. And honestly, while we're hurting, I might even crank this up to the next level. It's not as much bang for your buck, but it's still quite good. That is an incredible amount of capacity just to be able to run around and in 2 of these guys empty an entire, storage of this size. So quite helpful. Glad we have them. Gonna keep making more. Have in fact boosted our entire setup here so that we get there faster even. The other thing that I wanted us to take a look at this episode is the farmland stuff, and I was thinking we should squeeze in like a 5th farm here. We have the arable land, we just have to move some things. But then I realized we're actually pretty close to the greenhouse 2 technology, which increases our production. And I thought, well, we're certainly not going to use nuclear today, so why don't we reprioritize and just sort of slip this into the queue ahead of it, and at least see if that solves our problem. It's a 25% boost to our output because the greenhouse 1 has a 25% increase over the basic farm, right? And then this has a further boost of 25% to 50% more than the basic farm. So, it's not exactly this, but it's roughly an additional 25% of our production, and roughly that's one more farm out of the 4 that we have here, which is the same as what I was thinking about doing, adding a 5th. We've got some more solar cells out here, so let's go ahead and expand our solar production. I will say, I don't know, I'm building more than I usually do. Maybe we will actually end up spending enough here that we get a meaningful amount out of our generation here. It's still very low single-digit percents, but we could kind of keep doing this expansion indefinitely. It'll just take up more and more maintenance, but anyway, let's see. The other thing I wanted to implement while we're still waiting for the greenhouse tech to roll in is the CO2 recycling step. So, as we remember, back in the day, we took all of this exhaust, ran it into a scrubber, and that was a hugely beneficial thing for our air pollution because instead of dumping exhaust into the atmosphere, we were dumping CO2, and CO2 is less pollution per unit than exhaust is. Not only that, but it compresses it down from 480 to 192. But in order to really cross the finish line and go to 0 air pollution, you have to be able to deal with the CO2 as well. There's a few ways you can do this. We actually haven't talked about this, I don't think, but there is this technology that's available earlier called a gas injection pump. And you can take the CO2 and mix it with some seawater, and as long as it's stacked on top of a limestone deposit at least 6 tiles deep, like this, depends on your map, you can find these naturally, or you can just dig a hole and fill it with limestone. That also works. And it looks pretty much the exact same footprint and shape as the water pump, but it pumps seawater and CO2 down into the earth and you get nothing, which is exactly what you want when you're talking about getting rid of CO2. However, what we can do that will produce something that is actually valuable for us is to take it and in a chemical plant 2, specifically this has to be the chemical plant 2, not the plant 1, we can turn that CO2 into graphite. And by the way, although I rarely use this, but I actually can almost see the argument for it in this playthrough, given how much hydrogen we have, you can take it, mix it with hydrogen, and make some ethanol. Now you're not going to be using nearly enough ethanol by volume for this to be the way you want to dispose of all of your CO2, but it's a way that you can make ethanol if you want to save on corn. Just a thought. But what we're going to do today is the massive compression of 144 CO2 down to 6 graphite. So, as you'll recall, graphite is a supply that we need to run an arc furnace. We are currently running an arc furnace out this way to make our molten silicon, but there are a number of different recipes that you can use. It is essentially an alternative to the blast furnace. Requires no coal, makes less pollution, takes a ton of power, also takes graphite. It's the only way we can make molten silicon, but it's an option for everything else, including, actually, for copper. So we've had to supply, so far, the graphite by way of this chemical plant 1, where it takes coal and chlorine, it makes graphite and sour water. Sour water, we have to run over to our refinery, squeeze it into the sour water stripping process that happens over there. We have to bogart some coal and bring in chlorine, although, we're using it in this area, at least fortunately, also for plastic. But it's a more complicated production. It's a little bit more wasteful because, again, we can simply produce this as an alternative by taking the CO2 that we already are happy to get rid of. So, by coming over here and turning all of our CO2 into graphite, not only will we reduce our air pollution, we'll be able to clear out that production. However, as you'll see, we do not consume nearly enough graphite on average over time to absorb all of the CO2 from this scrubber alone, actually, even. So we're not going to be able to take all the CO2 out of the air today. What that means is, well, in the future, when we have a lot more power and we start to make these arrays with arc furnaces instead, we'll be able to scale up and remove more CO2 from the atmosphere. But until then, we have to make sure that we have the ability still to vent our CO2 because we definitely don't want to block everything up. So what I'm going to do is pull this smokestack over here, relocate it, not delete it, and put a balancer in here. And what we'll do is say, hey, anytime you have CO2, if there's room to turn it into graphite, which we'll send over here for export, great, do that. Please prioritize it. If not, though, well, we still have to vent it. And we could set this up at every exhaust scrubber that we have, not to mention, by the way, also the boiler over here that's only running fuel gas, right? That's dumping out a ton of CO2. But if we're going to set up those balancers at all these spots because we can't absorb all of the graphite, that's a bit of a waste, right? If this can't even run at full capacity, why would we build multiple of them? So for today, we're just going to use this building. And when we notice in the future that this is not enough, perfect. We can clear out the balancer and we'll end up adding another one at further stations. But we won't be able to send our air pollution all the way to 0 until we have enough graphite consumption to justify that. Either that, or if you really want to, you could still set that all up and then just put all the graphite into an enormous, ever-expanding series of massive storages of graphite and just hold them there and hope for the best. But you can't delete it, so it's not worth the storage cost in my mind. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I've never done that, but I'm not going to do it today. So I'm going to hop in here, do the rewiring, and set up the export. Simple as that. So the CO2 will come out here and enter this balancer, prioritized out to the chemical plant 2, overflow to the smokestack, and the graphite, very small volumes again, so basic belt, comes out here to this unit storage, which is near its import-export compatriots over here in this tiny little courtyard. I don't know that we'll expand it beyond that much, but it seemed like a convenient location. At any rate, let's go ahead and get this all built, and with Unity, because we're talking about otherwise potentially backing up our exhaust scrubber and therefore our entire steel production. But yeah, so this should be helpful. Like I said, it's not going to be all of our CO2, and it's not going to be all of even the CO2 at the steel plant specifically, even though it will be at least for a minute until this backs up. So I doubt we'll see a huge impact to our air pollution right now, but it's the start of the steady process of taking the rest of that towards 0. Yeah, and a little while later, this is slowly but surely piling up. This actually represents something like 1500 CO2 avoidance, right? Because it goes from 144 down to 6. Pretty good. I've also had it boosted in the short term. One of the things that it's fine, but it's just one of those little bothers in this game is that a scrubber gives you 192 output. We're not at 100%, so it doesn't matter too much. But the base here is it processes most but not all of that. So you either have to intermittently boost or set up a second machine that'll never be fully used, or set up a proper CO2 pipeline across the base and merge a bunch of different things up. It's fine. It's all good, obviously, but I've been boosting it a little bit here. In the longer run, like I said, a good amount of it's going to get overflow balance dumped anyway, but I figured until we have at least 1 truckload worth of graphite to deliver, I would boost it, because we now can come over here and drop off the graphite, call it here, I suppose, and redo this wiring. So I'm going to hop in and take care of that real quick. Easy enough. So we will have our trucks bring over the graphite. It will come from over here, but also the little bit that we just cleared off the line here. So I'm not going to bother cleaning this up with Unity quite yet. I'm running a little bit low and there's no rush, but it'll be nice to not have to deal with running all of this sour water every once in a while. This is a machine that can come off the board, and it'll save us a tiny bit of coal and chlorine. We'll take that. Mostly it's just nice to be able to replace it with something that is not just better as far as like an easier thing to supply, but also it solves an air pollution problem for us too. So, very good stuff. And there we go. Our second statue is complete. So, as we said, the second one is 50% as effective as the first one. So we'll have a total of minus 6% to our maintenance. The first one did -4, the second one does half of that, -2, sum together. If we built a third one, it would be 50% of 2, so we would get down to -7%. So this is where you sort of start to see the drop-off be pretty hard. So I usually just stick with the 2. Plus, as a pair, they look cool, right? Good symmetry. All right, so we have Greenhouse 2. Let's go ahead and implement it, which is easy enough to do. We simply upgrade. And let's do all 4. Let's see how that improves our production. Terraforming update. Lost that middle chunk. This is the last bit of what used to be a pretty imposing ridge along here. We're continuing to push out this way, and very soon this squad will be able to direct their efforts at pushing this back. I really feel like this is coming along quickly, and our limiting factor is just how quickly we can dump this rock, really. If I weren't being so precious about sorting out this little bit of dirt here, we could probably move even faster, but it's so pretty and clean at this point. I feel like we've come so close, we have to preserve it across the finish line. So, this is good. It's looking very solid. Alright, yeah, we've just got enough of these large fellas out here that our sorter throughput is clearly insufficient, so for the second time in as many episodes, I'm going to redo the sorting. It is a thing of beauty to watch this thing go. And yet, we actually don't have the belt throughput to take total advantage here, so let's go ahead and replace all those as well. It takes a good number of workers, and that's not a small amount of power for a single sorter either. But we can handle the workers because I unloaded the ship. We aren't going to get housing 4 just yet, so maybe what we'll do is go over and expand into the last obvious spot for our footprint. So we'll have to move the transformer. I don't know, that seems like a fine spot. Set it out there, and once it's good, we will delete this one and add a net new housing 3, which should give us plenty of room for another couple hundred people. Oh, and by the way, while we're here, remember when I said, well, we were piling up the sulfur, but it wouldn't be a problem until we filled all the way up through to the sulfur storage? We're getting pretty close. Might have to think about something to do with this coal. Not a now problem, but a sooner than it was problem. And this whole area is officially flat. Look at that. Beautiful. You love to see it. So I moved all of the trucks and excavators over here, and we will, goodness, really start annihilating this side, I'm sure. So let's give it an extended assignment. Home stretch here. I actually told it to cut off here because I want to have a bit of a platform here. I'm imagining a bridge over to this island, and it's at level 40. If we were to come straight across here and flat, we'd hit right about here. So I'm imagining a ramp, and why remove this island just to, or remove this mountain just to make a new ramp in its place. So when we get this close, I'm going to have them sort of chisel away instead. So make sure that we, actually I might even trim that back slightly further, just to be safe. But all of this we know we want to go. By the way, just sort of checking in on the progress on this iron mine. We are very clearly entering the home stretches of what we can properly get in this zone before we have to come up here and start doing longer haul trips. So we are trying to fill this area in so it's easier to work with. I'm toying with the idea of a train shuttle. I'm not sure if it'll make a ton of sense, but we're eventually going to need to make this iron ore receiving anyway. But first things first, we're going down to -1, filling in with rock here, which no problem. We've got plenty of rock coming down in the area, so that's working just fine. And then I created a mine control tower specifically to control the dumping of dirt in this zone so that it'll be flat and mesh with the surface in the area. That'll also give us another zone to drop dirt in case the contract area gets full, which it still does on occasion, and I think will again soon now that we're ripping into this area over here too, so good to have options always. Just added another row of solar panels as well. You know, it's starting to add up. We're producing, what, 3 megawatts? Wow, I mean that's 75% of what it costs to run that arc furnace, so it's starting to contribute in a meaningful way. Look at that. So early returns are good on Greenhouse 2, buying us a bit of time. That upgrade seems to have been solid on the production side. Of course, these things are harvest-based, so they're very spiky, but the line is trending up over time for most of the goods I think that we were struggling with. So that seems nice. We're getting a bit more ethanol in even, which means we have enough corn, at least in some moments, for overflow. The potatoes, still fine. You know, it's still pretty much impossible to keep up on fruits and vegetables, but as I said, it's getting better over time. Most importantly, plenty of wheat, and therefore plenty of bread. And soybeans are actually doing pretty well as well, which means we have good tofu. It's nice to at least have tofu because our single chicken farm remains wildly insufficient for our meat and egg needs, but overall, I'm pleased with it. The other thing to check in on, right, is increased output requires increased input. How are we doing on the fertilizer? Well, we're doing just fine so far. The weak link in this production is this chemical plant 1, excuse me, where we toyed with upgrading to a chemical plant 2. It is approaching running at 100%, but it's not there yet, so we can leave it as is because we are still producing more than what we need with the final building in the chain, this mixer 2 for fertilizer 2. So that's all good to see, and it's not a throughput issue. We have max fertility still. And the water, it takes more water too, right, is the other question to ask. And I would actually say the irrigation tanks towards the end here are getting a little bit low. Oh, these are pipe 1s this late in the game? Yeah, well, that'll explain it. So let's get these upgraded as well. The reservoir over here, by the way, from last episode's brief collapse, is way back up, and did it even hurt out here? No, not really. So good to see that. We have plenty more room to expand from a water supply perspective, and that's without even coming over here and touching the completely full and jammed up groundwater pumps on this side of things. Genuinely, the min-max thing to do that I can't frankly be bothered for is probably to go through and pause a handful of these pumps. We definitely don't need as many as we have on the table right now, but it's 2 workers, a little bit of maintenance. I'll live with it. Good to see though. Very pleased we have our water sourcing sorted out so robustly. We do, similarly from last time, continue to dump water over here to make sure that we have brine. We could probably pause one of these sets and still come out okay right now. It's probably a little wasteful. I mean, they're all running. Yeah, maybe I'll try that. Pause one of these sets and see if everything ends up okay. Probably will, but I'll keep an eye on it. All right, well, we have completed the nuclear reactor research, and that, combined with the fact that we have cleared out all of this open space, means that next episode, we are ready to start this grand project. Of course, there's still some work left to be done to finish clearing out this area. But as I said earlier, no matter what, the first step is going to be building the power source for the entire island. And that's going to be the nuclear facility running off of the uranium that we will mine right there, which means the best location for it is somewhere in this area. And this is plenty of space for nuclear. So, next episode, we break ground. It begins. I'm pretty excited. I hope you are too. We've been building towards it for quite a few episodes now. So, as a reminder, this is the last episode in the abbreviated schedule we've been working with the last few weeks. Thanks again for your patience. And that means that we pick up the pace again next week, starting with nuclear. Pretty exciting stuff. Until then, though, have a great rest of your day, and bye-bye.